Hi, this is Mr. West, Rossit's Most Stylish, and today I'm providing some further analysis on the Paper 1 mock exam of July 2012, but this time on the USA 1919 to 1941 section, okay? As I say, it's by me, Mr. West, Rossit's Most Stylish. Okay, now this question is about Henry Ford, speaking in 1926 about his kind of philosophy of selling cars. It's better to sell a large number of cars at a small profit than to sell a few cars at a larger profit, okay, because it enjoys large number of people to buy and enjoy and use the car. Also gives large numbers of men employment at good wages. That's his philosophy. Now you can see there's two areas here. First of all, there's the level 4 to 5 area here, okay, which asks you, when it says how useful is this source as evidence, you're going to tell me about the car industry really there, okay? But look, this basic principle applies. You'll get 4 if you're just talking about the car industry, but you only give me one side of the situation, okay? So for level 5, you're going to give us both sides, all right? So why it is useful and why it's not, okay? You get a couple of examples here in the mark scheme which are nice. Okay, source B is useful because it explains that Ford was selling more cars because they were cheaper and because he was selling, he was able to pay good wage in a profitable company. But then it doesn't really mention other industries, such as glass, leather, older industries, and people who got fobbed off, farmers, older industries and blacks, aren't really mentioned in this source, okay? But then to get up to 6, you need to then try and think, right, what can I do to show the relation to the question, which is about America in the 1920s? Okay, that's what we're looking at, America in the 1920s. So you might think about like the impact of Ford's policies, the fact that like 75% of American glass was made and used in cars. You've got oil, rubber, wood, steel, tarmac or whatever, all these other industries that are going to benefit from that, okay? You've also got the idea of getting lots of men in to kind of build the cars in a way that makes them quickly and cheaply, and that means that they can be sold cheaper as well, and that obviously links to all the consumer good industries. But again, it's not useful as this content is not typical of older established industries such as coal mine and textile, which are struggling because of the competition. It also applies to farming, which was suffering from overproduction again. So my advice would be this: obviously you're going to try and hit the level 6 in it, relate to the question, but what you must do is do both sides, because if you get in 4, you're just a bit of a mug. If you get 5 and you've tried to get 6, but you've maybe just got bogged down in the particular theme that it's on and not been able to widen it to look at the whole of the 1920s America, you've still got 5, okay? And then obviously 6, you're going to try and do both sides of it, okay? Okay, one of the issues with this is students being able to identify the main message of the cartoon. Now, the question says, what is the message of the cartoon? And I myself would almost use that as a sentence starter. The message of the cartoon is... And then you almost can't help but right at the beginning from stating the main message of the cartoon. Okay, the cartoon should relate to the inequality of the boom. What the mark scheme says, divided, not fair to the farmers, whatever, okay? And then, when you've established the main message, you then need to pick out some of the details from the cartoon, okay? Obviously, you can see that the farms are for sale. You've got the dollar signs here being produced by the factory. And some of you also comment that the farmer seems to be quite poorly dressed. He's got an old-fashioned hoe or whatever it is to work the ground, okay? Whereas, obviously, there seems to be a lot of technology in the city. Okay, so I've picked the details out of the source. Then I need to add some of my own knowledge. Okay, so in their mark scheme, it says that they were struggling to compete with Canadian wheat farmers, and people were making too much, and overproduction was an issue. Can you get some facts and figures in there? How many farms closed in the 20s? What happened to the price of wheat in the 20s? How much money did farms make as a whole in the 20s? These are all facts that you know. If you drop in those in, then you're going to be doing both sides to get level 6, okay? Details from the cartoon, and then obviously your own knowledge, alright, which you can be credited for. And as I say always, make sure that it is specific knowledge, okay, and not just like, oh, our farms are doing bad. Try and get some facts and figures in there. Look back through your work, get those figures down in this piece of work that you're completing now. You'll be laughing. Okay, this question, why was this photograph taken? The big thing we've got to think about is, what was the motive behind the photographer, or what was the purpose of taking the photo. Okay, they're the two things that we need to be thinking about when we're answering this question: the motive and the purpose. Now, unfortunately, it's gone on its side. The photo, it was all right in PowerPoint, but it's gone on its side now. But it doesn't really matter. Okay. A photograph of a black family in their home in Virginia in the 1920s. Obviously, that's important, the 1920s, because we don't want to be talking about any other period. And I think that, as it says in the mark scheme, the purpose was to highlight the situation and to encourage action for the poor people. We can see we've got, 6 children, it appears, really, in this photo. We don't see any parents. There's something tipped over, very basic. The windows seem broken, and they do look to be in incredible poverty. Okay, so that's the key point. Get that in there, and then you're going to be able to build it up. Why was it actually done? What was the motive and purpose of taking it? Then you've done that, and then what a lot of people did pretty well was they mentioned about the KKK. Okay, and the racism that affected black people. They also said that a lot of black people tended to share the crop. Okay, so that means that they would farm the field, but then only get part of the sale of the cotton. Okay, black people always had the poorest jobs and really lived in terrible conditions. Okay, where they could be attacked by racism or just the economic plight of the situation. Yeah. So there you go. This photograph was to highlight the situation and to encourage action for poor people. The photographer wanted to stir up the authorities so they would take action. Around 60% of American families live below the poverty line, particularly in rural areas and particularly with black areas. What I would say is, I don't know if that's necessarily the main, what I would say, reason why it was taken, but that's what the mark scheme says. But I think if in the exam you think about what it is, the motive and purpose of the piece, when you see why was it taken or why was it produced, what was the motive and purpose, even if you don't get it quite right, I think the examiner will credit you for that. If you miss that out and then you start talking away from the mark scheme, you're going to be down in the lower marks. Okay, yeah, have a look at what it says in the mark scheme, put down some advice for yourself. Okay, now obviously I'm running both questions on you. I either did 5 or 6, but what I would say is I'd put some advice down for each question, so that you know that if you want to do a question on the other side of it or a different aspect in the real thing, you can use this to help you. Obviously it's 4 points, alright, the social consequences of the Wall Street crash. A big thing, the first thing I thought about was obviously Hoover and the Hoovervilles. Alright, that's the first thing that jumped to mind for me. It's not on the mark scheme, it just says homeless built shantytown, so you'd be alright. Put that down. Unemployment, lost their homes, and that's it. The key point with these questions, I always say, is make sure you make 4 points. If you make 4 points and you don't get 4 marks, then fair play. But if you only make 3, you're not going to get 4 marks, that's the end of it. So try and get 4 points down. Also, don't write the earth, okay, because it's only for 4 marks. 6, action did Roosevelt take in his first 100 days, obviously laid the foundations of the New Deal, but the first point you mentioned. Fireside chats would be another point I mentioned, dealt with the banking crisis, and then just bringing in one of the alphabet agencies would get you the 4 marks. Also, recovery, relief and reform, which were his 3 R's, okay, obviously different to ours, but fair play to the lad. Okay, so now I move on to the 6 mark questions, the explain why questions. And I think the big piece of advice I would give for this is that you need to make sure that you're going to write 2 paragraphs. Oh, I'm doing it like this because I fit it in. I will, okay. 2 paragraphs, and that's a key point. Now, what I've done for the first one, why was Hoover unsuccessful in dealing with the effects? First of all, he was perceived as a do-nothing president, okay? And that's because he believed prosperity was just around the corner, and that he believed in rugged individualism and the Republican ideas that government shouldn't get involved in people's lives. That's my first point, explained, and that's going to mention the exact scheme. But then when he did get involved, he was unsuccessful. So, for example, with the bonus marches, okay, those people who wanted their veterans' pension early, okay, set up that Hooverville outside of the White House, and then Hoover ordered the tear gas and the tanks and the army to go in, and really he looked very unsuccessful. You could have also added that even when he did try, okay, it was seen as too little too late. So the Hoover Dam and things like that, people just thought, because he was perceived as a do-nothing president, that was the work he did there was just too late. Okay, but I've split my answer into 2 clear paragraphs, and if I was to write this out, I'll be showing the examiner, I want 6 marks, I've got 2 clear paragraphs here. Okay. On the next one, why was opposition to the New Deal? Obviously, there's three areas of opposition that we've looked at. The Supreme Court, people who said he wasn't doing enough, and then Republicans who we've kind of just touched upon. Again, I'd be picking two of those. I'd be setting them out as separate paragraphs. Okay, so the Supreme Court talk about it being unconstitutional, the AAA and the NRA, and him trying to pack the court or whatever. Then not doing enough. Huey Long, Father Coughlin, those kind of people. What do they want? What they believe? And obviously the Republicans, which I've just talked about. But whatever I do, whichever the two of those three I picked, and it'll probably be the first two to be fair, I would make it clear to the examiner, look, here's 2 4 or 5 line paragraphs, maybe a little bit longer, and I've explained 2 separate reasons. You've got to give me 6 marks. I think that's the key bit for you, for some of you. Get those 2 paragraphs in, and then explain using your own knowledge. Okay, now whichever question you did, you were faced with the same structure of essay answer, okay, where there was a statement with 2 options and you were only allowed to refer to those 2 options, okay. The first one, the following were equally responsible for the Wall Street crash: speculation on the stock market, overproduction by American industries. Clearly, obviously, you need to have 2 sections to this, whether it's 2 paragraphs or a couple of paragraphs in each section. You need to really make sure that there's 2 sections to your work, and adding to that, you need to make sure that there is balance as well, okay, because if you just write a lot about one, then you're going to fall foul, okay. Even if you write about both of them, but an answer lacking balance, the maximum mark you can get is 8, okay. So if you write a lot about speculation and not that much about overproduction, then that's a problem. Obviously, you've got to cover both sides, and again, it's got to look like that's what you've done. The only thing I would mention on this first one, which is a bit of a shame, is you've got to read the question. It says speculation on the stock market. I read a lovely answer about speculation on Florida land. We always put those things together because they're both examples of speculation, but of course, I couldn't give it any marks, alright, because it was about the stock market. Okay, overproduction by American industries, definitely those kind of things. For the stock market, I think it's important that you mention buying on the margin. Okay, the idea that people could buy for 10% of their of the share and then pay the rest off when it made profit. But of course, when it didn't make a profit, they really were struggling. And I think it's the idea as well of consumer goods and farming. Okay, actually it says American industries, so don't mention farming, but overproduction by American industries. Okay, this idea that once people had got something, that was the case, but that things were still being produced with a lot very, very quickly. Look at Ford's production line. Okay, he's churning cars out all the time, really quickly, and if he can't sell them, then that becomes a massive problem. Flipping down here, it adds my third piece of advice I would give on this: revising the topic. Alright, at the end of the day, if you haven't revised the topic, don't pick it. And there's a little bit of exam savviness that comes into this, because I think this question 6C is quite difficult. Okay, and I think it's much harder than 5C. Given that you're choosing 20 marks to answer, and 10 of them are found in this last one, I think it's a no-brainer that you should go, in my mind, for 5, because it's easier. But it's about having that, looking at the questions and seeing what you can answer and putting the most weight on the most marks, okay? Obviously, we did this. I remember looking at this section in the Walsh, okay, about farmers and how they, and industrial workers, how they benefited, and black Americans and how they benefited or how they didn't benefit. The issue here, of course, relates back to this point about balance, all right? There's quite a lot on farmers and industrial workers, and that's 2 separate groups, if you ask me. Black Americans is obviously only one group, so you really need to make sure that you've got enough on both sides. You don't just write loads about farmers and industrial workers. If you do, and not anything about the blacks, or very little, you're going to hamper down how many marks you can get, okay? Yeah, again, have a look back through. If you've done that question and you've had you've struggled with it, look back at the Walsh, look back at that section when we looked at the successes of the New Deal. There was a section on industrial workers and on black Americans, all right? Have a look at that and see what's what, all right? Added to that, then it comes to your conclusion, all right? And for my conclusion, my advice to this would be maybe to think about the order, okay, for this first one, all right? What was the order of events? Now, for me, overproduction triggered businesses to start to slow down, which triggered the share prices to drop and made that speculation was a problem. So I'm thinking about the order for that one. Which comes first, which triggers it off, and that's a nice answer for us. In terms of this bottom one, who benefited more? I think that you'd obviously need to make sure that you've got both sides kind of covered in your answer. But obviously, black people didn't benefit very much at all. They got some jobs, but they always got the worst end of it. Okay, so the issue here is maybe don't be too one-sided. Remember, if you pin yourself against a wall, you look stupid and you're maybe just missing out. So a really good conclusion there. Maybe make sure you're not too one-sided and sort of saying that the farmers, industrial workers benefited more. All right, have a look through, get your sheets put together. What advice are you going to give yourself? And when you've done that, give me a shout and I'll let you know what marks you got for each question.